Before we get into what I know you really want, which is how do we identify triggers that can create problems, identify how to block them and how to stop them, let me talk to you quickly about triggers in general and the things that actually drive your problems. And this doesn't matter whether you have migraines, whether you have seizures, whether you have bloating, whether you have back pain, whether you have neck pain, whether you have headaches, it's all irrelevant. You can use the same formula, the same secret formula that I've worked on for years and years and years with many patients to identify exactly how to pick these things up. You see, I've been doing this for a long time now, and it's been really hard and complicated for me to explain to patients that comorbidities drive things, and it's not just a one-off thing. For example, if we use migraine, what we understand about migraine is that whilst we understand that neural excitation, stimulation to the brain and changes to what we call the trigeminal-vascular pathway really drive this migraine process, it's very hard for people to understand that today my migraine was triggered by going to the dentist, but tomorrow, next week I go to the dentist, or tomorrow I go to the dentist, whatever, and it doesn't trigger a migraine. So how can that work? And what we need to understand is most conditions have what we call comorbidities, things that come together to produce an end result. So an example of that would be for the migraine sufferer. Today you got a whole lot less sleep last night than you should have got, and today you ended up with a migraine. But 2 weeks time you get a whole lot less sleep than you had that night. This time you don't get a migraine. So what's the difference? Well, if you're female, maybe last time you also had your period, so estrogen and progesterone changes made you more predisposed to that, and therefore the sleeping was a bigger issue than it is today. Likewise, we could have a situation with an athlete who is going for a run. They're off, they're doing their run session today, they go for a run and they've got no problems with their knees in any way, shape or form. But last week they did the exact same program, they were more tired, and it was a huge problem simply because they did it at the end of work, which fatigued them, where this time they did it on a Saturday morning and they were fresh. So we need to understand that comorbidities are the big things that we need to identify, and if you're doing this in your head, it's virtually impossible to do. So if you sit down and go, why did this cause me pain this time but it didn't last time? Well, this time I did this, last time I did that. The biggest problem I have seen with more than 20 years working with patients is we start developing emotional responses. And this is a huge problem when it comes to recovery. So for example, the human brain wants to rationalize and it wants to understand every single action that we do. It needs answers. It can't have loose ends. So today you go for a run, now your knee is sore, you go, what have I done different this time than last time? I guess this time I wore my new runners rather than my old runners, so therefore my new runners must be a problem. And I went from brand A to brand B, so brand B must be a problem. But then what ends up happening is that they have brand B in other types of shoes. So now they go for a walk in their other shoes, which are brand B, and they go, I wonder if I'm going to get knee problems because of this again, same brand. And lo and behold, they do. And now they develop this emotional predisposition that this brand is creating their problems, when it may never have been an issue. And it possibly wouldn't have been an issue if they didn't already have it in their head that this brand was a problem. Another example of that could be a patient comes in and this time they speak to me about their headaches. And they say that one thing they noticed was that this time when they had their headaches, they drank water out of a water filter, and they drank it, and an hour later they had a headache. So therefore they conclude that, hey, I've never used this water filter before, and whenever I drink tap water, it's never a problem. So this time they associate it. So now all of a sudden, every time that a bottle says filtered water on it, they now have this predisposition to getting this headache back. So what we need to understand is that placebo, this word placebo, of where we can generate results. And we generally talk about placebo from a positive perspective in terms of, hey, maybe you just had this positive result because you took something because you believed it was going to help you, this placebo effect. We need to understand placebo works in both ways. So if you have an inner belief that the placebo is going, or that the problem is going to have a placebo effect in a negative aspect, then it may actually induce this problem for you as well. So whenever we're tracking and we're trying to work out is A or B creating my problem, whether it be diet, sleep, exercise, hormones, whatever it is, stress, we need to actually take it out of our thought process and put it into a logical, systemized process to identify what those true triggers are. Failing to do so, I've seen it over and over and over in more than 20 years of practice working with thousands of patients, that patients or people will draw conclusions that are completely incorrect, that then distort their perception of reality around this, which is just purely a placebo emotional effect, which then affects them in oh so many other ways. So we need to make sure we do this correctly, or you can potentially generate a whole other lot of problems. All right, so there's a couple of different steps we need to do. So step one is what we call trigger identification. Step two then is trigger management. And we're going to do this in two separate ways, okay? All right, so first one here is trigger identification. This is what we call our trigger diary. In this, what we want to do is over the course of a few weeks, okay? This is really important. You need to do this over a few weeks. If you're a female, you need to do this over at least 1 to 2 cycles, okay? Just because of hormone dysregulation or regulation changes can actually make a huge bearing on what you feel. For example, when estrogen is elevated, you tend to get more emotional, and this is why we understand that a lot of women notice that when they get waxed during or just before their period, it hurts so much more because the estrogen sensitizes their emotional state. And that doesn't mean that you're teary and things like this. It just means you're a lot more sensitive to emotion when your estrogen levels are higher. So given you have a fluctuating cycle, we need to take that into account and get at least 1, if not 2 cycles worth of data around your symptoms. But generally speaking, we say take at least a few weeks to identify all of those triggers. Now this is what I need you to do. Write down time of day and the date. Okay, so let's make up a date. So let's say this is the 1st of July. Okay, so this is our date. We're going to write down the time, so 4 p.m. And then we're going to write on what the pain was or what the symptom was that you felt at that time. So we're going to use migraine as an example today. So what brought on this migraine? So I had a migraine and it was brought on simply after I ate chocolate. So chocolate. An hour later, I got the migraine. So how can we manage this going forward? So what we're basically going to do is for the next week, 1 week, no chocolate. That's our management strategy. So what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate this as a variable and we're going to monitor it. So the next week, now for instance, let's say on the 6th of the 7th, we got another migraine and this was also at 4 p.m. So now what was the immediate thing beforehand? Well, we hadn't been using chocolate, so that's not an issue. What else do we know? All right, so what else we know was I've been working and on the computer for the last 6 hours. Straight, without a break. Okay? So what can we do about this? All right, so if we know at 4 p.m. it was an issue, so what we're going to do is I'm only going to do computer work until midday. And then after that, I'm going to do different forms of admin or different types of work. And now we're going to monitor that. And let's say now on the 20th of July at midday, I got another migraine. What was I doing right beforehand? Had a dental appointment. Okay, so we've got rid of this. We've now had the dental appointment. How can I manage this? Well, I don't have any other dental appointments for the next month, so that's not an issue. We can pull that away. All right, so let's keep going through. So now all of a sudden we had another migraine, say on the 1st of the 8th, and this was at 5 p.m. And what had I done that day? Well, I'd been at work all day and actually I fell back into the habit. And whilst I didn't use it in the morning, so AM was okay, in the afternoon, PM, I was back on the computer. So now we can start identifying, hey, you know what? Every time that I've been on the computer, right after that, I've had a migraine. So now we've got clarity around what's triggering it. And unless you get 5 or 6 times where the same pattern emerges, you don't draw conclusions on it. Okay, this is the easiest way to start doing this, because what you'll find is that every condition, as I said, has comorbidities. So if we're talking about migraine, what we know is anything that stimulates the brainstem can potentially cause it. So tech time can do it. So that's one. There's another one. And we also know that sometimes having your mouth open for a long period of time can trigger it as well. So that's another possibility driving it too. So what we look back here, we say chocolate was a trigger, but really 4 p.m. there, hey, I was on the computer, and this just happened to be pure coincidence. The driving force was actually the computer more than anything else. So this is how we identify triggers. Now, a few key things you need to be aware of with this. Number one, devil is in the detail. In other words, be as specific as you can. The more specificity you put into this middle column, the quicker that you will write things up and identify them. So for example, I've just kept it simple here with the little space we have, but you might put on this first day you had chocolate. Yes, but I was at work. I'd been at work for 7 hours. I had been in front of the computer. I'd been talking to certain people, what the stress level was on the day. The more detail you put into this, the quicker you will find the variable that's creating the problem. That's the first one, okay? Once we've got this, then we can start going into our management strategy for that variable, which is what we've done here for each of those variables to eliminate them. So if you have 6 things on that day that are relevant, so it might be work, computer, certain foods, fatigue, stress, remove one of them and see if the symptom changes. So control the variables. Once you know what the variables are, and you might come with 4 or 5 different things that are triggering that, once you know what the variable is, then let's move to our flare-up management plan. So in this case, we're going to take our variables, write them down. So in this case, it was the dental, and it was also our computer use that was driving it. Okay, that might be a bit hard to see. So dental and computer. Once you've got that, let's go across to our flare-up management plan. So this is our flare-up management plan. So there's 3 key aspects again to the flare-up management plan, like we had to our trigger identification plan. So the first one is, what are the factors that could cause this flare-up? The second one is, what are the early signs that you are flaring that up? Third one is, how do we manage that process? So let's go back and let's look at the computer side of things. So number 1, what are some of the factors that could cause this flare-up? So it could be length of time on the computer, it could be the brightness of the screen, it could be the ergonomics of how the computer's set up, it could be whether you're fatigued or not. If you wear glasses, it could be, are you wearing your glasses or not? There's a whole lot of different things that could cause that flare up from the computer. So what we want to do is identify all of those and write them in to begin with. Okay, so we're going to write all of those into here, so we've got them there. The second thing we're going to do is, once we've got that there, is we're going to look at what are the early warning signs that I'm not coping. So for example, if the cortex or your brain is getting really wound up and getting fatigued, what we might find is we become more emotional, we become more aggressive, we get frustrated, we get snappy. These might be early warning signs that something's happening. Once you've hit that aura phase of a migraine, you're starting to lose your vision, that's too late. That's not an early warning sign. The process is already occurring. So we want to go before that. What are the signs and symptoms that may be before that? So in this case, let's just put in here personality changes. Personality changes as our big one. So then what we're going to do is, what do I need to do to manage this flare-up? So how do I stop it from happening? So what are some things that you can do to identify when this is happening to you? So what we could say is, am I getting frustrated? I'm going to do a 20-minute check on a regular basis of whether or not I'm getting a personality shift. So we might have a pop-up that comes onto our computer and just says, hey, how are you feeling? And if you're feeling frustrated, you know, hey, it's time to step away. We might have one on there that says, is everybody annoying you right now? Every 20 minutes. As soon as that answer comes back, yes, everyone seems to be annoying me, then that might be a way of working out this mechanism. So these are the things we want to be able to do. So we identify the trigger first. We then look at the factors that could cause that flare-up that you need to work with. What are the early warning signs, and what do I need to do to manage those things? And when we look at these managements, you can use each of these things as well. So for example, if it's computer screen is one of them, well, can we put blue light filters on the screen? If length of time on the computer is something, well, can we put short breaks in there? If the type of work you're doing, well, can we vary that work up? Okay, so we have different strategies to deal with this and keep it under control, and then we have markers to identify when you're not coping. And if you can put all those things into place and you have a strategy set out around that, then you've got simple ways of regulating those mechanisms, identifying when a problem's there, preventing it from happening in the first place, and taking control of those symptoms. And you can use this in a whole lot of different ways. We could do this with headaches from food sensitivities. We could do this with bloating. Is it coming from your hormones? Is it coming from your food? Is it coming from your lifestyle, your stress, your sleep patterns? We could do this with weight. Today you're putting on weight, you didn't yesterday, what did you do differently? There's a whole lot of different ways you can do it. Even things like performance in sport. Why are you improving at this meet but you didn't improve in last meet? Why is training fun now but it wasn't last week? You can use these management strategies to deal with any problem that you have. It's all about identifying the variables, then working out what are the things that are contributing to the variable you've identified. How do you acknowledge, or how do you recognize that it's getting to the point where it's going to start creating a problem? And how do we put things into place to preventing it ever becoming one? And that might even be certain forms of treatment, therapy, or lifestyle shifts, whatever it needs to be. But if you have a logical, systemized process to identify those problems, you'll find you get to your problems a lot quicker, you don't get emotional about it, and you resolve your problems for the future. Anyway, I'm Trevor Jacuti. I hope that's helped you in any way, shape or form. If it has helped you, can you please just post up below and just let others know how it's helped them and what you've done. Maybe you've got a slight variation on how you use this in order to perfect it, make it even a bit more simpler than what I've come here. And please remember, this is really important, yeah? Progression before perfection. It doesn't matter if you don't get it all right in one go, just repeat it and do it again until you get it right. Once you've got it right, you'll find it'll change your life, it'll help you dramatically, and it will help take the emotion away from health and allow you to prosper and get to the results that you want to control your life again. All right, I'm Trevor Jacuti from SpineWise. As I said before, if you have any questions or anything, please post up, send me a message. Always happy to help in any way, shape or form. If not, I'll catch you in the next vid. Bye for now.